everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Universe Within podcast. This episode of the show is being sponsored by my friends over at a company called Real Mushrooms, realmushrooms.com. Sky Chilton and his father, Jeff Chilton. I interviewed Jeff a number of episodes ago. Really interesting guys. I really enjoyed that conversation with Jeff. And it's a company that sells and distributes medicinal mushrooms in powder or capsule form. I was really happy to have these guys come on. I think they were very much in alignment with the values of the podcast. As you all know, a big part of this podcast is about plant medicine, holistic medicine, and I think the benefits of medicinal mushrooms are truly fantastic, and I think there's really a growing body of work that's really showing and alluding to all of the amazing properties that mushrooms have. They sell a lot of different mushrooms, things you've probably heard of, like reishi, chaga, lion's mane, turkey tail, cordyceps. Those are all mushrooms I work with. They're part of what I consider for myself a really holistic supplement regime. And the thing I really love about their company, not only are they really good guys, I think they're really ethical guys, but the product is really amazing. It's all 100% mushrooms. They're organic, and that's really rare. For better or for worse, the supplement industry is highly unregulated, and so often when you get supplements, you don't necessarily know what you're getting. You may be getting some mushroom, you may be getting a bunch of fillers and other things. Oftentimes, even when you're buying what may be a mushroom, it may not have any of that mushroom in it at all, unfortunately. Even some of the big, I think even the biggest company that sells mushrooms, actually it's not the fruiting body, not the mushroom itself. It's the mycelial, which is grown on grain, and then those things are mixed up and then sold in a supplement form. So not only are you not getting the mushroom itself, you're getting the mycelium mixed with grain. So it's one of the amazing things at Real Mushrooms is it's exactly that. It's real mushrooms. So it's 100% mushrooms, organic. So you're getting a really good product. You're getting the actual fruiting body, the mushroom itself, 100% of that. And again, just really great guys. I'm really happy to have them on and supporting this podcast. So if you'd like a really good product, you'd like to start working with medicinal mushrooms, check out their site, realmushrooms.com. And also listeners of this show, if you go to their site, realmushrooms.com/universe, you get 25% off your first order, which is a really good deal. And I think once you start working and tasting their products, you'll really see and feel a big difference. So thank you to them. And I think that's it. And without further ado, here is the intro to the show. On this episode of the podcast, I sat down with Marta Fabregat. Marta is a really interesting woman. She was recommended to me by a friend of mine, Kathy Coyle, who also recommended to me, not my last guest, but the one before that, Shona Home, who I really enjoyed that conversation. So when Kathy recommended Marta, I was really happy to heed her advice and have her on. Marta's a teacher of Kathy. She does a lot of different work. It's always kind of hard to describe people who do this work, but she works with plants. She's a somatic practitioner. She works with nonviolent communication, but a really fascinating woman. And we sat down and we spoke a bit about her background, a little bit about her time in South America, working in activism, her time working with an indigenous Huachumero, a person who works with San Pedro, and kind of her journey into herbalism, into working with trees, and kind of that world that really opened up to her about learning directly, experientially from plants and especially from trees. Very similar to the work we do and that I do. So it was really interesting for me to sit down and speak to her. She has a really beautiful presence. I think a really beautiful way of communicating these ideas in a way that also isn't super direct, but it puts us more into a state of really being receptive and open to something else that's being said, which is also, I think, very much the language of the plant. So I hope you all enjoy enjoyed this conversation. As always, if you're able to support this podcast, that's a really big help to me. Patreon is a really beautiful way to give back. I like it because it also works in this idea of reciprocity. So if you feel like you're gaining something from this podcast, it's a way you can give back. You can sign up for different tiers. These tiers give you different things back, things like early access to shows, bonus material, Q&As. To all the patrons, to all the people supporting that way, as always, thank you very much for your support. And if you're able to do that, that's always a really big help in allowing me to continue making these shows. If you're not able to do that, as always, helping out with the algorithms is really useful. So if you're viewing this on YouTube or Rumble, hitting the subscribe button, liking the videos, turning on the notification bells, those things are all really helpful. Leaving any questions or comments in the comment section. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, leaving a starred rating and a short review. My next guest as well, I have someone coming on to speak about the legalization and religious status of some of these plants in the U.S. I have another guy who's worked at a big ayahuasca center in the Peruvian Amazon for quite a while. A gentleman who recently wrote a book, and a couple other people lined up. I was took a little bit of time off, and now I'm kind of back, so I'm lining up some really interesting guests. And so those will continue to come out in the weeks that follow. So I think that's it. Also with my work, if you're interested in working with me, our next upcoming plant dietas, we have one in August in Canada and Ontario, but I believe that's sold out. And our following one after that is in November in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and we still have spaces open for that. So that's a really beautiful way. If this work of working with plants, of doing dieta, of learning from these plants interests you, that's a really beautiful opportunity. And you can find out more on my website at nicotianarustica.org. So I think that's it. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Marta. Running out from the maze, running out of the maze today. From the maze, running out from the maze, running out from the maze today. I'm running out from the maze, running out from the maze, run out of the maze today. Marta, thank you for coming on. So you were recommended to me by quite a close friend who's worked with us. We've worked with her. Her name is Kathy Coyle, and I believe you're one of her teachers. She's recommended. She also recommended another teacher of hers, Shona Home, who I actually just interviewed, and it was a really good interview. And I have a lot of respect for Kathy. So anyone who she says I should interview, I didn't even really think twice. But I listened to a little bit of your work, and we had a short talk before we did this, and I think let's see what we get into. But from what I understand of you, I think you're doing really fascinating work, and kind of, as we spoke about, maybe even quite similar work. So maybe some of the audience has heard of you, maybe they're familiar with you, but I would imagine at least some or many haven't. So maybe to start, and I know this is always a big question, but maybe you can just familiarize the audience a bit with who you are, and kind of how life unfolded to get you to the point you are.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for inviting me, and also thank you to Kathy for letting you know that I was here somewhere in the corner of kind of lost in the tracks of rural Ireland. In the west of Ireland, I live in a very small place, very close to native oak woodlands in the west near Galway, South County Galway. I don't know how I got here yet, but somehow I ended up here, being a Spanish woman, also coming from a farmer kind of background, and rural Spain, in close to Aragon, Valencia, Catalonia, kind of a very specific area of Spain where there's almost also like a crossroads of happenings. And I ended up here out of, I guess, inquiring. I was in Spain kind of looking into working with, at the time, late 90s, working with human rights and keeping company. I wanted to keep company to life processes in some way. I was in my early 20s, and I was quite aware, I suppose, because of my background, my childhood, of the suffering of, in many ways and many forms of people and living processes, starting from my own childhood, but also all people around me. And there was already something that had a life of its own in me. So I ended up in the west of Ireland, and I, after many ins and outs, I married an Irishman, and we created this place. We call it Antionol Cottage, and that's, I think, your son or your daughter crying. Hello to her. um, so yes, I mean, loads of things in between all of this. Yeah, but yourself, life happens, and after doing a lot of work around the human rights sector and kind of frontline activism, as alongside herbalism work and teachings of herbal medicine and plant medicine, like all of that was kind of throughout my life quite parallel, living in parallel, and also learning from Latin American traditions and the Celtic tradition, with different teachers, different shamans, and you name it. I end up in this west of Ireland space where I realized I just wanted to stop everything and the spoon fed of everything, and just to sense life in nature, and stop. Also not as a judgment, but also the paraphernalia of stuff of sensing life, and becoming a little bit more simple, or more Zen kind of living. I also practice Zen from the ordinary mind, and that, I think, is very much my foundation of what happened afterwards in my life. But the other day someone was asking me, so what do you think it is being a Buddhist? Because he knew this person that I did all this journey of Buddhism, and I took vows and everything. I said, I guess it's like Christian. I don't want to become a Christian. I don't want to become a Buddhist. No, I just want to be it, whatever that is. Not following anything. So yes, I am here. Almost, when you talk about yourself, I don't know if that happens to you. It's almost something doesn't want to talk too much about self and identity. That is kind of boring, and I almost want to feel it with you, and all this, the complexity of everything that is implicit in the words that I'm sharing. People are getting a life lived, but also the life lived of many of us. No. It's not that important, my life, really. And at the same time, yes, I am doing and living in a way that I suppose is keeping company to many people. In the west of Ireland, I created like a small farm, a small holding, where also living in a kind of community, if you want to call it like that, but it's not even like that, neighborhood of people that are decided to live in close proximity. And we home educated our kids. So that's kind of the personal background as well. We home educated all 6 kids. And I think that was a very important aspect of cultivating all of this that now I am bringing in the world, which is very much about creating spaces for experiential pedagogy, a way of learning that becomes your ongoing beacon or your ongoing lighthouse of following your own inner direction in life. Creating the conditions for growth and learning is what interests me more than applying any method, or, again, I use the word paraphernalia, or intruding in the process of life processes. So maybe that's a background. And I want to hear you, how you feel when you hear all of this, and maybe we can start having a conversation about that.
Well, it's interesting. One thing that I find, or I found interesting that you said is you were very influenced by activism, and
yeah,
it's not obviously it's not 100% correlation, but I find actually a lot of people who are drawn to somehow working with plants. I mean, maybe it's because there's an element of respecting plants, nature, and somehow a tie to justice, to conserving. Do you think there's something in that idea of justice, of good and bad, of right and wrong, of, I don't know, light and dark? Because I also I had heard or read that you spent a lot of time in South America as well. I believe Mexico and Ecuador. Was that part of what drove you to go to those places?
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that. I get a felt sensing of, when I hear that question, almost I can see a memory, like an instance of a living moment that is like, whoop, comes there when you ask that question, and it is an image of maybe 3-4-year-old me in that village where I come from in Spain. It's called the area is called Maestrado, where my grandparents had a farm, and they were. I spent most of my childhood with my grandparents, and thank God for that, because there was no external influence in their intromission to my process of playing, and I think that in a way saved my life. Of course, there were other things happening, but having enough of that was balancing the conditioning act that we are all part of, no? But living in and growing in the midst of nature, and walking through the forest at dawn at 3 years old without nobody worrying that I would die. A kind of a sense of connection, of web of life from a very young age, I guess, in some way. Like, I don't want to be using words or phrases that are too out far, because I think we all have the capacity of that. It's just that the conditions for most of us were not there most of the time, and those moments that we had, they were unique for and we would remember them. And those instances will come when we ask the question that you asked. So why I ended up in Mexico, I think, is because of that, because of those moments, because I was there was something in me about the learning processes, how the conditions are so important. So I was, as well as being concerned about the imposition of structures that are guiding us in a particular way of being, to fit in particular boxes, to continue fitting into particular boxes, to function in a particular matrix of operating in a way of living. There was clarity from very young age, and I was kind of but it went into rebel kind of way, reveling from that, and seeing it from a rebel point of view. That brought me to activism and wanting to show up for that part of me that rebelled from the imposition, and I wanted to live also at the same time. But that, again, is what you're saying. I was very close to nature, so I couldn't really be frontline only without nature. Even in the reveling, my rebel part was informing something else within the reveling that was still coming from the implicit origin of walking through the forest at dawn. Even in the being merged with the part of rebelling, there was something of the, I guess, the original something of the knowing. So I ended up in Mexico working with human rights, but mostly with indigenous people, especially Chiapas and the Zapatista community, in kind of human rights, observing the possibility of any intrusion from military or paramilitary. So it was kind of tough at times, and but also I realized that the conditioning of aspect of me being a white woman also there, and the power of that, and that also loads of learning from all of that, and I ended up mainly, I didn't want to be only just there as a human rights observer that has that, I mean, that kind of power among all the people that are working from 6 in the morning to 6 in the afternoon in the milpas, in the maize fields. So I ended up working with them more and less doing the other work, just being with them in that capacity, just being. And in Ecuador, it was more working with violence against women, which is part of my background as well. I studied mediation, feminism, and women's studies, and violence. And I'm an NVC trainer as well, nonviolent communication. So there is a blend of all of that, of in being with plants, but also being very aware of how we are not nature in many ways, or how we are kind of isolating ourselves from nature, and how can we get back there using the language of our human conditioning as well to get there. So it's like, it's perceiving all these different worlds that we are part of. Is a ongoing mystery and inquiry in my life.
It's interesting. I probably said this story too many times on this podcast, so if there's regular listeners, they're maybe tired of it by now. But one of the things I found really fascinating, I worked at a big ayahuasca center in the Peruvian Amazon for I guess about a decade, and one of the things I always found really fascinating was we would the healers. We were working with a group of people called the Shipibo, and we would often take the guests on, we called it a plant walk, where the healers would show the various plants that they're working with, because a lot of people came down and they thought they were just working with ayahuasca, but usually in a more traditional sense, ayahuasca is one plant amongst many, and kind of a gateway, a visionary plant that allows people to connect much more deeply to the plant kingdom. But I think sometimes just through a lack of knowledge, people don't necessarily understand that. So we would take them on these walks, and the healers would show different plants to them, and it was this fascinating dance. And I came with the same mindset, and it was this mindset of really wanting to know, wanting to understand from a place of the mind. What is this plant? What's its name? What does it do? What are its properties? What are the chemicals in it? What are the alkaloids? What does it treat? How do you dose it? How do you work with it? And so we would go on these walks, and we would come to a plant, and the guests would say, "Oh, well, what plant is that?" And they would say the name of it, and then the guests would inevitably say, "Well, what is it good for?" And the answer was usually something along the lines of, "Well, it's medicine." Yeah, but what does it do? What is it good for? Well, it's this beautiful medicine. Yeah, but what does it do? And in the beginning, I wasn't sure if there was a language translation, because we were also translating from English to Spanish to Shipibo often, or if we were lucky, maybe just English to Spanish. So I wasn't sure if there was something that was getting lost in the translation. I wasn't sure if there was a natural guarding of information, which would also be perfectly acceptable. Like maybe they just don't want to divulge that. And I think both of those were true. But I think what took me many years to understand is there was just literally, there was a different cosmovision, that there was a different way of understanding the nature. I mean, you use that word, but the nature of the plants, the nature of the work, and that it couldn't be reduced so much just to the mind, although the mind is also a big component. But it reminded me when you were speaking, because a lot of the way you're speaking seems to be from this felt sense, that this felt sense also triggers certain things within our body, within our memory, our energetic field. And maybe that could be called somatics, which I think you work with. But that seems to be a big part of even when you're speaking and your work. Can you maybe speak? I mean, I know it's a big a big subject, but how that plays in not only your work, but also your own learning process of what that began to teach you. Because I think it's something that, again, probably a lot of people are maybe even familiar on the level of mind, like what that is. But I think it's really hard to begin to shift from that level of mind into something that could be called more of a heart space or a felt sense or a beingness.
Thank you, Jason. I am very conscious of that those words have meaning for many in many different ways for people. Very conscious of that, and that many branches of inquiry around the human body and embodiment have used the words in different ways. So I don't want to fall into that place, because for me it is radically it's a radical departure from knowing what that is. And it has to do with a philosophy that it's not only thought philosophy. It's experiencing. It is experiencing. So, like now, for example, if I go into the mind and explain to you what the felt sense is for me, I'm not already feeling it, no. So it really is about understanding beyond that conscious thought of what that is. So, and because, as you were saying, we are nature, what does that even mean for each of us? No, it's like again, I come back into the walking through the forest at dawn. No, what that means, that interdependence with environment. So no wonder people in the indigenous people, the sea people that you were with, they were saying it's medicine, because that's exactly the right answer to exhaust the mind that is craving, or it has aversion, no, into knowing or not knowing, because it's not only what we can know about it scientifically, or even through research of years and years of a particular something or a particular living organism. These people that live with them every day and they walk through the forest at dawn with the plants, they know more than it can be said with words. But also the relationship that is happening between the people and the natural world also changes us ongoingly. Oh, so how can you say that this plant is only for toning the vagal tone of your nervous system? How can you only say that? Or how can you even say that the vagus nerve it's in a particular way for all of us the same? So for me the implicit connection between all living things has a level of changing the paradigm of being ongoingly, because we are interaction before we even are aware of it. It's already happening, no? I do say this with embracing the humility that is required, and the reverence to that natural world that we are part of. No, that there is a requirement of humble beings, humble sovereignty, maybe, if you want, humble sovereignty. And that has a felt sense, what that is. Really not being in that space of the need for that like for me now, if that activism aspect of myself really comes in the forefront in another way, because this kind of felt sensing of really it has many facets of being and speaking to me that are related to something that is growing in our environment, and that in connection with all living beings, not only humans, that it is becoming a critical mass. And I am very aware of that, and the commitment that is required of that humility. The arrogance of the mind will never succeed here in this place. No? And even when I say that, I feel like, yeah, what an arrogant thing to say. But yeah, I don't know how to explain it better than that. And it's not about succeeding either. It's about, I think there is something about the realization of that we don't have a clue. And we don't need to have a clue to be part of this living process that we are. So there is a little bit of mind convincing. It's cultivating that as well, isn't it? Because the mind will want to run the show no matter what, like you were saying. But I think the mind can be our friend here. I feel that more and more, and be equal partner to the living process of the felt sense of interaction with environment and growing together with a plant, let's say ayahuasca, or let's say oak. It doesn't matter. They are all master plants. They have so much to teach us if we really slow down the rhythm of wanting to understand and find a frequency that resonates with the environment. That always will be a different language every time. So you cannot learn the language and apply a method here. I laugh because we are so thirsty of applying method. So we have it. Yeah, we have it. And then we can do this amazing work with people. And then we can go out there and do this. But no, maybe it's about embracing humility, reverence into no paraphernalia, really being naked with whoever you are with as another human being, not something more, just another shaky human being. So I don't know, I'm answering your question or a little bit like that.
Yeah. So you're spending time in South America and Mexico and in Ecuador. I think you also mentioned, I think not here, but you spent time with maybe an indigenous healer, or you learned something when you were there. Can you speak about maybe also how that began to influence you or shift your way of perceiving? Because also what we're speaking about is somehow directly learning from plants, and obviously, I think many people in this podcast are somewhat familiar with that. But even with that, there's many different ways of learning, of knowing. I mean, as we said, like these plants can be very programmable. I mean, the way one person works with oak could
they could treat one thing physically, or it could be psychological, or it could be experiential. It's something maybe they don't even know, but and someone else works with it in a very different way. And so, obviously, anytime we come to a plant, there's also this relation between the person, the patient, the practitioner, the plant itself, and so many other factors, the soil, the intention, the environment. But what were some of the things that began to influence you specifically on your path to begin to learn deeper from plants?
Yeah, thank you. When I went to Latin America, I was already working with plants, but what happened there was something that I would never have expected, because I was in the world of more political world at the time. I was individually, having a spiritual life with plants, but not in that way out there where I would be sharing nature in my 20s with other people. That was a personal experiencing. But when I arrived there and I was working with women, and I was working specifically on violence on women, and I was, remember this, I was a Spanish woman in Ecuador, an indigenous population. All of a sudden, someone tells me that there is this shaman that comes now and then and stays there for periods of time, and that them come and they just create this kind of multitudinary ceremonies for 300 people, 400 people. The whole village, the whole community would come, their children, everyone, old people, and they mainly to work with Wachuma, with San Pedro. Yeah. But I had never done anything like that in my life before, or I was not looking for it. So this person arrives and they introduce them to me, and then we become, quite friendly towards each other. And then he comes and he says, I want to work with you. I want you to come into the ceremonies and do something in relation to what you're doing with the people already. And what he proposed, and I like the idea, what he proposed was, as I'm going to be doing the aspect of the medicine, I want you to be with me, I guess, assisting with anything happening with people, but also at the beginning of the ceremony, to tell the story of being a Spanish woman in Ecuador, how that feels for you. So coming from a political place of and very aware of the effects of colonialism in me and in the place that I was, it was a powerful experience. I speaking for these 400 people that all ages, that and say and speak about my understanding of colonialism, how I do understand it, and being a Spanish woman living there, how does it feel for me? It was powerful. So I had to do a few times, because he was there many times and for periods of time. So every night we would have these big multitudinary things, and I would go through this, and then supporting in the process of anything happening that needed attention with people. And then he said, he wanted me to stay and live there. It was not in my plans, but he wanted me to stay and continue that work with him. I did question it. Should I do it or should I do it? And it was a very clear no. Because when he left, he would leave, then people would come to me asking for help and things like that. And that was not my felt sensing of what it means to be companioning in the process of healing. Even though I didn't have the process that I have now, 30 years later, I was already very aware that I didn't want to create any codependent relationships in the process of becoming a more truly human being, or in the process of getting well. And there was already something very strong, of not wanting to intervene in that process, but to keep company. So in a way, I was already doing that, keeping company so people would find their own way of learning how to be with themselves. It was quite intuitive. And then I decided, no, I cannot do this. Still, there is paraphernalia here for me. I don't want to contribute to any form of oppression. So that political was very strong. And I am very aware of how that happens in the world of healing as well. And I would be outspoken about this. I do name these things. I'm very interested in becoming redundant as soon as possible, that people, to facilitate the conditions so the person can find their own way of healing, which is natural to them in every moment. No? More than any exercises or methods. So that's what happened in Ecuador. Yeah.
So then it's interesting because also when we speak of colonialism, I think we often think of kind of faraway places, but it's also interesting because you ended up in Ireland, and Ireland was also colonized. I mean, all of Europe was colonized at some point, but interestingly, in Ireland, because that's also where I met Kathy, and we've been there the last few years, and it's been really beautiful, and I also feel a very deep connection to that land. But also it somehow feels, I don't know, at least for me, more than in other places in Europe, that there still is that memory that's still very present in the land and the people of being colonized, of being kind of separate, that something was lost, something was stolen. And also interestingly with that, because also when we speak of like indigenous traditions, we do the same. We think of places that are very far away and very, and I'm just speaking because most of the audience of this is Western.
Yeah.
But we also forget that all people at some point were indigenous and had culture, had traditions. And in Ireland, it's also interesting because I also feel it quite strongly there. I mean, it's not necessarily in everyone. It's not, I mean, you look at Ireland on the surface, and it's like any other place in the world, any other European place with cars and people working and pubs and everything. But people still have in their lexicon, in their vocabulary, things like the word fairies. They still have customs of maybe you should be a bit cautious around a hawthorn tree. Maybe you shouldn't cut down an oak tree because there's power to it. There's a royalty, there's a regality to it, or even if you do, maybe there needs to be reciprocity, or maybe there are consequences, or maybe you need to ask permission, or maybe you need to make an offering to the elves. And that's something that's very different in a lot of cultures, which you do see in many other places. I mean, you see that it comes to mind in Southeast Asia. It's a very common practice of making offerings, of speaking to other entities. And was that something that drew you to Ireland? Was some sort of felt sense in that way of that connection, of that connection to the trees there, to the land, to the people? I mean, because it's also quite interesting. Or it was just you ended up marrying an Irish guy, and that's where it was. But even working with trees, and it's something I'd like to maybe talk about more, but because it also was very much influencing me was that Celtic tradition, because there still really is an energy there. There's a knowledge, there's a wisdom, and it interestingly, it also requires, I think, a bit of investigation, a bit of feeling into, because it's not, for example, with Shipibo, there's still a very solid structure there. There's a strong tradition. There's a path. There's teachers. There's a way of working. And but what I felt with the Celtic tradition was there was the framework there. There was knowledge. There was wisdom. But it was a bit mysterious too, because things have been lost. Things have been missing. And I think there is something there waiting to be rediscovered. Like all of these traditions, it's kind of the cycle of time as things flourish. I mean, it's one of the qualities of nature, of entropy, is a plant. It struggles to get out of the darkness, out of the womb, out of the ground. It's searching for the light, and then finally it begins to, it's battling the elements and the other plants and the predators and the bugs. And if it's strong enough to survive, eventually it begins to flourish. It begins to fruit. It begins to give medicine in many, many different forms. But then also at a certain point, it experiences entropy. It begins to wither, to wilt, and then eventually to go back into its system. And yet there's still a trace of it. You can see it in all things if you look in the right way. I know that's a very long-winded question, but I guess it's getting to Ireland, and maybe if there was something about that land that drew you there.
Yeah. I guess no wonder we find ourselves in the places we are, no? Because yes, as you say, there is that philosophy, the same philosophy that guides us. That's something that we don't know, but it knows itself to be true. It's living through us, and it's implicit in our life. We might be aware of it or not. So when we become aware, there is the role of those interactions within us become part of our ecosystem that informs, no, with the ecosystem of the present time. So yes, it drew me to Ireland. What it drew me to Ireland was that something. Maybe who knows? Maybe something. Spain was also has also very strong Celtic tradition, and I have a heritage in Galicia in my life. But I don't even want to go that. A part of me is like saying no. Yes, maybe in my cellular making, I have an organic memory of ancestral and of all the stories that we love about all these past lives and past becomings. I don't want to go there, and I don't think it is relevant for this moment. So even now, my sense of all of this is, yes, I am here and in the west of Ireland, and there is something about the trees, and there is something about the ancient oak, especially, but native woodland that I am interested in. That is part of something around how complex living system can flourish and can grow, and is facilitating change ongoingly, but also how that is dying and transforming. I'm more interested in the practicalities rather than narratives of a story that come to that. So yes, there is something about something that happens in Ireland also that is part of the organic memory that is left in the people that remembers something of that what I'm talking about, that remembers something around the interdependence and the reverence to the natural world. I do agree with you, and there is something, but something very also simple. Doesn't have to be a very big thing. It's simple and very humble, and there is a humility, maybe also because of so many years of colonialism, that people have direct access. There is less knowing that is enough, less knowing of the arrogance, I mean, yeah, that there is maybe a greater access to folklore and to the felt sense of the interconnectedness of things in particular moments, even with people that maybe are in the capitalistic system ongoingly in their lives, but then they get to the pub and there they are as well, you know. So yes, I live in the countryside with local farming community and also blow-ins like me, And there is that I live this every day, how that happens ongoingly, and the doors opening if you are really meeting the people in those places, and how things change because it's part of our breathing system and connections. So I am very interested in also not reproducing the indigenous kind of knowing from history to stay the same. I don't believe it needs to stay the same. I believe it needs to change because we are also different. Ecosystems are changing. We don't need to reproduce the same thing that it was here 2,000 years ago or even 500 years ago. Living organisms grow, develop, change, and there is implicit connections among all the living things that are part of ongoing moving forward. And it needs to move forward if it doesn't want to become stirred. Nothing that stays the same will make any new thing, any new something. So I'm not interested in reproducing Celtic tradition. No. But I am breathing and I am breathing and I walk through the forest that I have here. I'm so lucky, and every day I kiss the ground for this. Because yes, the organic memory of generations and generations and all the folklore and gods and goddesses and all these stories that are still part of something that speaks about something, yeah, whatever that is, if it's true or not, it's not the important. All of these are instances of felt sensing something that is trying to bring awareness to the magnificence of what is possible. But I'm not interested in reproducing something to create something. More about, I'm maybe more, and I speak about broadly nowadays, and I want to even more. I notice myself speaking now and thinking, yes, we have to stop this nonsense. So my activist is there, we have to stop it. Stop the human wanting to fix things and to make something like so wonderful that we are all flying together into another Danann. No way. We are not there, and that is kind of is the illusion of not being present. We are here. There is many possibilities of really reaching to feel sensing the organic memory of the wholeness, of the complexity of all of this. But not necessarily we need to reproduce exactly the same. I believe that by noticing the subtle aspect of what, the cellular, molecular being of who we are in contact with the environment and the interactions in the present moment, if we develop that and cultivate that, we macerate this cultivation like a good wine, no? With years, we will be there finding our way to new, fresh ways of being. But maybe we won't see it. And that's the thing. Are we ready to let go of wanting to see it happening and just live the moment in contributing like another bug in the field? That's it. I think we have to come to terms to that.
That's really beautifully put. Again, a lot of these things are hard to put into words, but there is something in this. You said something along the lines of this illusion of not being present, of this idea of wanting to change, to kind of fight, to the activism of flying high, these ideas of utopia. One of the things, I mean, if I had to say something that plants tend to be able to teach, I think there is something about reality, about about at least recognizing that there is such a thing as illusion, and not even that that's bad, but it's spoken about in many different traditions of Maya, the veil. It's in Christian terms, it's the apocalypse, which is often mistranslated, but it literally means to lift the veil and see the world as it actually is. Um, a lot of indigenous people speak of these plants like tobacco or ayahuasca as this ability to see through the illusion. It's interesting because we often use these words like mareado or mareación. It means to be dizzy, and they speak about the plants making us dizzy, but actually I think it's a misunderstanding. It's that the plants allow you to actually see the world as it actually is. That we're already lost in the dizziness of life. We're all mareado. So when I met Kathy, and I don't think she'll mind me saying this, but she said she had worked with you, and maybe it was because she was doing a dieta with us that she also used those words when she was describing working with you, and she was saying that she was doing a dieta or a dieta of sorts with the oak tree, kind of like as I was speaking before. I think even for many people listening to this podcast, they're familiar with plants like Huachuma, San Pedro, ayahuasca, as being these teacher plants.
Yeah.
But I think for many people still, even people who are somewhat immersed in this work, the idea that oak is a teacher is quite a foreign concept. They know they may know it, but by name they may know it as a nice tree, a very old tree. It's nice for making things because it's a very hard wood. Maybe some people may understand that there's some mythology or some folklore around a tree like oak, because even in Europe, there is a lot of that. But how do you find that a tree like oak teaches or heals, or like in what ways do you find to be able to bridge that connection to experience something like oak? Because even when you're speaking, I mean, you're speaking about living in this land that's surrounded by not only oaks but native oaks, oaks that are from that land. And so again, I know this is a big question, but I'm sure people are also very interested, because it's part of your work. What does that mean to you to have a relationship with a tree, to learn from a tree, to heal with a tree? And it seems to also maybe very much tie into this kind of like somatic approach that you also work with.
Yeah. I thank you. Again, people when they contact me to do it, I work with native plants mainly. If someone wanted to work with other plants, I also can keep company, but I like to work individually. Because for me it is that kind of a living process that needs a little bit of attention before it can go into a group, for me, and that's my experience. And even the word somatic, it doesn't cover it, but it almost like we need to do a little bit of detoxing. That's my sense. So I do have a process that minimum of 5 days and maximum of 10 days of one-to-one dieta with native plants. So you would be taking an elixir, but also you're working in solitude in the forest. You're staying on your own, and only I'll go to meet the person once a day to bring the elixir that you would take for the day. And in that time, we are working through the layers of things that are coming up in this way, because it would be very like people come with preconceptual ways of connecting with nature, and because we have done, and as we were talking about before, and I was mentioning, we've been spoon-fed of spiritual practices of being with nature, and and going into narrative without felt sensing, without really felt sensing the language of the connection and the interaction that is happening in the present moment. So we can, it's very easy to be part of another living parallel, like a life parallel, without being present to really what's happening in the interaction in a forest, you know. We could be doing a sound bath and feeling that we are amazed by the grandiosity of the forest and not relating with any of the living beings there. So this is profoundly different. So the layers of blocking, what is blocking us from just being nature and be able to listen to that tree, however that tree or that plant or that living being. What do I need to be able to listen as if I was going to China and I didn't have a word of Chinese? What do you need? So if you're going to China and you don't have a word of Chinese, how could you show up? No? And so we work through that kind of understanding that in order to meet nature in its own language and in a language that it will be very unique for that moment, because you are bringing conditions, you are bringing an environment and an ecology, your inner ecology and biology, but also you are meeting a biology and an ecology in this moment. And in the interaction, there are a certain amount of processes, alchemical processes that are happening, no matter whether you are wanting for this to happen or not. It is already happening. The awareness of the, I guess, the slowing down and bringing attention to perceiving your own biology as a human being in that moment, and noticing the interactions in a very slow way, it's going to be primal to connect in the way I'm speaking about. You can connect in many other ways. You can even write a book of what the tree is telling you. But who is telling you this? That's the question. And I don't know. I just feel that it's more simple than, and a lot of the time it's more simple than stories created from that place of superficial sensitivity, because we all have that as well, and so there is some truth probably in all of that, but there is much more than we are missing. There is much more, and I think there's much more ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. What we are missing as part of maybe, those stories or those visions or all those things that are happening, they are not there to tell us, yes, this is it, fixed thing, you have to get that. They are only doorways. And what a pity only to stay at the door of knowing something that you are perceiving is only a door. Why would we want only to stay at the door of experiencing, no? So, the way I'm keeping company, and you know, maybe for some people in 5 days, the only thing that happens is just realizing that they don't have a clue about anything. And that would be really amazing if they get there. And I guess, I'm very, very interested in that, in this can't say it, detoxing our identity, really, to form the idea of form as a way of, it needs to be something, needs to be in a particular form. But if there is a form that we find the entrance through the form to find what else is there, not to store information, not to create memories and experiences, but to experiencing, which is different. Experiencing and having an experience is very different. So I'm interested in experiencing, not in creating experiences for people. I wouldn't want to do that. And for you now to come back home and say, I've done this amazing thing. I diet with oak no, thank you. I don't want to do that. It's not only that. You are becoming in contact with oak, and that's different, and that doesn't end when you go away from the forest. And it's not something that you need to speak about it, really. You are it. Yeah. So yes, I keep company to people in that way, but I also have a program that is called Sensed Ecology, and that's I'm very, very interested in that also as a kind of it's kind of a project, almost like a community project. I would say that I think for me it's growing. It's going in that direction of community critical mass on what it means to become nature in this way, and yeah, it's part of a living organism at the moment. All of that. This is happening in Spain, and we work with mainly in Spain now, and I work with 4 main plants or trees: mugwort, hawthorn, oak, and blackthorn, in that order throughout the year, following 4 moments of the year, seasonal moments, because we are seasonal beings, not to create a Celtic something or any type of form, but it is landing in places of cycling: February, May, August, and November. Yeah, and it's very beautiful. It's now in August we are going to be dieting with oak, group of 20 people in Asturias. Amazing place where there is this oak forest in a place that only 20 people can go. In this forest every day there are bears and all sorts of wild animals as well. But the oaks that live there also are quite ancient, probably one of the oldest forests in Europe of oak. So it's exciting. Loads of lovely things are happening in this way, in this simple being together and detoxing ourselves in a loving way.
Can you speak about how those other plants came to you? Was there some organic process with mugwort, with hawthorn, with blackthorn? Was it something that came from working with one of the others? I mean, because those are all very, very interesting, very, very beautiful plants, and also that have a long history of medicinal use. They're considered very strong healer plants, teacher plants, each in their own way.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't answer to you why these plants are not, what are considered master plants that are more, that have mind altering components. These also have mind altering components. Everything has a mind altering component when you are in contact and you create the space and the conditions for something to come in your body at that level that is going to be running through your system for an amount of time. It's going to have an altering space because it's like the whole plant is going through your whole chemical interaction with all the organs ongoingly for a period of time, especially if you are dieting. So this blood is going through your brain. Yeah, so there is your brain and all your little brains inside of your body. So I do believe that they are also creating the doorways of perception and opening doors. But I do feel that dieting is important. Yes. So the other plants came because I've been working with them for a long time. That's it. I've been working with mugwort, hawthorn, blackthorn, and oak for a long time. Many other plants want to come also, but this process specifically is kind of it's been for 3 years already in that order, and maybe the plans might change as because the people that come, they keep coming. It's not like something that it's not like you have a process and that's done. It's something that is part of a living organism of learning and of learning as a community, as a forest, in a way. So and it has the potential to grow in many ways. It's not only this time that we are together. We become a family and we become a community, and it's not a money-making thing in the end. Yes, we need to make ends met and everything else, but for me it's more like a bigger thing of it's something that is co-created by the people together, by all of us together. And these plants specifically have a process of cycling as well. For me, mugwort as a big initiator, but also is initiating with kind of a velvet gloves, but also sharp knife openings, things that have been blocked for a long time. But also does it with a quality of a gentle touch, this sharp knife that needs to open things. But it's sharp, but it's also caring in its approach to coming into the body. But for everyone it's different, you see. I cannot, even I say that and I say, no, look, the 15 people that we were last year, everybody had a huge different relationship with the plant, and that's what it has to be, because the plant in interaction with a ecosystem in certain conditions is going to bring different components and aspects that need to be there in that particular time. And I really love that, to see and to witness how that happens. It's really honoring, an honor and a reverence to nature, how that happens. It's very beautiful. And Hawthorne then follows, because so we meet throughout the year in also online then to go through the process together, just to share what's happening for us and just companioning each other. And then in Hawthorne for me is like for everyone else, is the medicine, is a big medicine for the heart, isn't it? And it's the time of the cycle that we are also coming out of the cave. It's the time of are we ready to open the wounds that were closed before its time? And can we open them with care and gentleness as well? So just another step into that. But at the same time, again, for everyone it's going to be different. It does have those components in its organic memory of knowing this plant, but I've seen all sorts of things with Hawthorne as well, and going into different places. It's a multi-dimensional plant, not only heart. That's what I want to say. Yeah. And like that with all the other plants. Oak. Yeah, I can feel the oak now going into Asturias, really opening very strongly, very, very strongly grounded. And I did name that before, humble sovereignty, in the direction of sensed ecology, in the perceiving our own biology as humans. And the group of people that are there there is a critical mass of projecting that for with living in community, maybe, or creating a spaces for that level of companioning and things like that. So there's loads happening, Jason. When you open the door to perceiving nature, I don't think there is a stop to that. It just wants to go. It wants to go, and it has a very strong clarity and direction. And it's not like, oh, it's going to be like this. No, it's actually, I don't have a clue how it's going to be. I don't really know. And yet, the trust that comes with this work of it's okay. It's just happening. We don't need to worry about anything. No, it's not even worry. It's not in the curation, if it comes, we also have access to, we are learning and have access to ways of creating the conditions for the worry to feel safe, no? So it doesn't stop the next forward movement of what needs to happen, but also that there is an integration of things. We are not denying also our human being, emotions and thinking, and the things that we are also made of, and they are part of us.
Beautiful. Anything you'd like to say about blackthorn? Because that was also a tree that I also wasn't familiar with until a couple of years ago, and it actually it came to us through a woman we were working with, an Irish woman, and we worked with it with her, which we usually don't do, but she felt a very strong connection to it, and so we did, and I was very, very impressed by that plant. I mean, extremely strong, and also just kind of surprised because it wasn't even a plant that I'd literally even heard of. I mean, I was quite familiar with hawthorn, but blackthorn I'd never even heard of, and I was quite amazed. And it's a plant I would love to begin to work more with.
Me too. I love blackthorn. Yes. But maybe I love it so much because it really, for me, is like in the process of the cycle, is one of these plants that it will always be the one to finish a process, because for me it's a plant that has in its poison the medicine or the antidote of its own sickness. This is difficult to explain, but it makes a lot of sense that within our own conditioning and the ways we are merging with our conditioning, and in the ways we are codependent to our conditioning and relationships, within feeling it in the profundity of its nature, of what it's trying to do, there is also its own medicine. So it's meeting our enemies more fully. It's about meeting our enemies, but in the meeting our enemies, also something that is very powerful is born, and which is related, of course, to the kindness of the origin of the poison, even in doing what it's doing. So it's like, it really brings you into your knees. For me, it's a plant that brings you to your knees. And if you are ready for it, great. It's not a plant that we are always ready for. That's what I'm saying. I would say that. It's not a plant that you are always ready for. And I wouldn't bring someone that hasn't done work there yet for a while. Something like that. But again, we are who we are, and people are people, and we meet what happens in the moment, and it will always be okay, because nature is very generous. Always.
Well, amazing, Marta. I know we're coming up on our time. One thing you mentioned in the beginning that is interesting, because I think seemingly maybe on the surface it doesn't necessarily tie into this work, but you mentioned this idea of community, and even this idea of homeschooling and living in close proximity to people, and I think that's something that a lot of people are feeling almost at a cellular level, like more and more. Not only something that they want, but something they feel like is actually making them sick, because they become removed from that. And even that, like I was reminded kind of that imagery of you were saying, walking through the forest. I mean, I think that's a really powerful metaphor of trees, is they also are in community, that there is a harmony, there's a symbiosis, that there's a felt sense of well-being when you're in a forest. For most people, I was reminded by a story of my grandmother. She went to New York one time, and the taxi driver, she was speaking to them, and she was saying she came from the countryside, and he was saying he grew up his whole life in New York, and one day he left, and he got about 45 minutes outside of New York, and he had to turn back because he said the silence made him so afraid that he went back. But also there's a lot of conditioning that can happen there as well. But I think for most people, they feel that felt sense of connection, of harmony, of being part of something, of being part of something greater. It takes them out of also their sense of self, out of their mind, and it puts them in touch with a sense of well-being. And I think that's what a lot of people are also speaking about in that terms of community. And it's interesting that you've done that, and I think so many people are looking for that. Is there kind of any recommendations or things that you can speak to that? Because again, I think it's something so many people are looking for, and yet something that seems very foreign to people as well. Like how to actually have a community of people, how to be around people who are like-minded. And is that even maybe necessarily a good thing? Like maybe there is a good thing to being around people who have differing views as well.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't think we have enough time to go through all of this. But I will try to do my best. Yeah. Just sensing the complexity of what you are proposing. But yeah, you were saying that maybe not everybody feels like that, but I do feel that even those that are not sensing it, the implicit awareness, it is part of this in the forest, no matter if you are aware of it or not, or there is a thinking process that is worried about something, a life situation or whatever, and you are breathing, nature in that moment. It is already contributing to that awakening inside, no matter what. I do feel that all of us are in some way there. So that brings us back into the question of community as well, no? Because in different we are maybe already living in community, and we are just trying to look for something that is an idea of what this could be or this would look like. And I guess, yes, in my experience of this time, living here, and I remember when we first arrived, and this had these big ideas about what community living would look like. We read all the books of communities, how to build a community, you name it. And but I suppose one of the things that was very strong, specifically for me, was again the memory of my childhood, of living in contact with nature in that way, and also living in the communities in Latin America. Something was very clear that didn't want to go against the system anymore. Was very clear that didn't want to go into frontline screaming anymore of anything or saying no to anything. I just wanted to say yes. And so yes, but that doesn't mean that I knew how to do it or how this could be done. So we went through, the people that were here, we went through a period of being in love to not being in love to hating each other, like everybody, when you live in close proximity and you have everyday interactions, this happen. But also working through it and showing up even to the uncomfort of all that stuff. And after now 20 years, in some way, we are all still here. But also in some way that is friendly. We are not fighting, no? But it's friendly and it's becoming that kind of family. It's a family. And that we meet now and then, and we go out and we want to go out together, and we have cinema nights, and we all have our own spaces, but we do make an effort to keep that companioning being different as well, and having found different ways of exploring this way of living. And it's beautiful, because maybe this is at the end what needs to be, is being neighbors and being and living in communities that are alive and that are open and that are flexible and that are sensing the fresh moment of interactions, and that we can contribute to the something that is asking for a relationship. All of that, no? So I do believe that after this time, that I would do it again, and I might do it again. So this is already happening. So I might do it again in a way with what I know now, at least contributing to creating a space where it's this way, flexible, open, felt sensing. But I do believe that needs to be a critical mass of people that can welcome life in this way. Because and maybe the idea that yes, this is available here. Everybody is welcome in this way. So it's not close from the broader community, but yes, why not live in close proximity to people that are wanting to be in certain way without isolating from other possibilities. No, there are. I think for me is something is kind of opening into that direction, not wanting to create something, and at the same time, in itself, is just being. It's just being something that it is true to. No? But all is part of the same thing. Yeah. All of this is it remains to be seen, Jason. We'll see in the next 20 years what happened with that. But I'm not in a hurry, and I'm happy to play these games of living and interaction and relationship. Is I love it. I love it. Yeah.
Well, amazing. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing. I think we covered a lot of ground. I think there's a lot more ground we could still cover, but maybe for another time. Before we head out, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you'd like to speak about, or you feel good?
No, thank you. I really appreciate you and the way you express the questions. That I really felt that you were contributing to the felt sensing of the interview. Very much. I felt you very much in those places where something was becoming, and it flew. Yeah, I enjoyed it a lot. Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I thank you to Kathy, if she's listening as well, for putting us in touch. But again, really thank you. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for coming on, and thank you for the work you're doing. It's, listening to you, I think we're actually doing very similar work, and it's easier for me to say to another person, but I think the work you're doing is very needed in this time, and it's very beautiful. And I think there is a big process of all of not just working with plants, but this type of work. There is a process of remembering, and it's I think it's something very beautiful, and it's getting people more in touch with who they are on a deeper level, and it's a beautiful thing, and ultimately it is in that activism sense for the greater good. Because I think it is really teaching us about harmony and reality, and all of these things that people all over the world in tradition speak about: reciprocity, about give and take, and that nothing is free and everything has a cost. And what is our part? What is our part as an individual and in our own journey? What is our part as a whole of something that's even greater than ourselves? So thank you so much. This was really a pleasure. And like I said, I would be happy to talk to you for another 3 hours if that was possible, but maybe we'll save that for another time. And I hope next year we're also back in Ireland working. It's like I said, it's a really special land for us. And I think and hope it'll be a place we continue to work and not only to share, but really to learn from. I feel like there's a lot for me to learn from that land as well. So I hope that happens. So maybe even one day we'll meet in person. But yeah,
I love that. Thank you,
if
Jason.
if people are interested in learning more about you or contacting you, what is a good way for them to do that?
I have a website with my name, basically, Marta, Marta Fabregat, Fabregat.com. That's probably the best way.
Okay, great. Yeah. Great. Well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes. And thank you so much again. I really appreciate you coming on, sharing, and just your presence. It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. That's it. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Marta. I really felt she has a beautiful presence and a lot of wisdom to share. So I hope you all gained something from that, and I'm sure you did. So thank you to her. Thank you to Kathy for introducing us. I hope this finds you all well. As always, thank you for tuning in. If you're able to support this podcast, that's always a really big help. Patreon is a really good option. You can sign up for as little as $1 a month. It's a website, and there's different tiers you can sign up for. Those tiers also give you different things back, things like early access to shows, bonus material, Q&As. It's a really big help in allowing me to continue doing this podcast. So to all of the patrons, to all the people supporting that way, as always, thank you very much for your support. And if you're able to do that, that's a really big help. If you're not, just doing some of the really simple things, helping with the algorithms. If you're viewing this on YouTube or Rumble, hitting the subscribe button, turning on the notification bell, liking the video, leaving any questions or comments in the comments section, all those things really help to drive the algorithms. And if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, leaving a starred rating and a short review. So I think that's it. I mentioned in the intro the upcoming guests. I think that's it. Also, as I mentioned, if you're interested in working with me, our upcoming Dieta in Canada is sold out, but we have another one coming up in November in the Sacred Valley of Peru, and that we still have spaces for. And that's a really beautiful opportunity to really go deep into this world of plants and learning and healing from them experientially. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope this finds you all well, and I will see you all on the next episode.
Tunga